Hello, everyone, and welcome back to our channels. Actually, so I'm here with One Fit Bruja from YouTube. Welcome to the conversation.
Thanks for having me.
Excellent. So we're gonna talk about blood magic deities and some of our spell work. So I guess we can just dive into what a lot of people don't talk about: spell work. I mean, well, sigil work, whatever you do with blood magic. So using your own blood, your own conception of the power of blood, how would you describe that power that it provides to spells or sigils or whatever kind of magic that you do with blood? How would you quantify that power that we add with our blood when we're doing magic?
So I view any sort of viscous liquid from the body as something that you could use to enhance something that you already have. Or if you're performing any sort of domination work, a little bit of blood goes a long way. You don't need to like gash yourself open and bleed all over the place. It's not necessary. Just a little bit will do. So you can either write sigils down and place the blood over it and activate it like that. You can say a simple incantation while you're doing it. The whole point is to channel and anoint with your own essence. So that energy is literally plastered onto that object that you are trying to bring into fruition into your life, whatever that working is for. You can basically do it for any working. It'll power anything. So that's how I use my blood and my sort of magic. So you can do many other things with it. It just depends on what you're trying to manifest.
I also feel like it's very much an energy source. It also makes something yours. I
Yeah.
once read, and I've started to do this as a practice. I'll write, if I want a magical tome to be mine, I'll write my name and then put my blood over it, and that kind
Yeah.
of that makes the tome mine.
Yeah.
But it definitely a power source.
Hmm.
It's it kind of emboldens whatever you're trying to do. So I do a lot of sigils with blood. Sometimes I'll write it in blood, or perhaps some kind of ink, and then I'll cast my blood upon it, rub my blood upon it, and then
Right.
that makes the sigil, that it kind of activates the sigil, and then it just makes it resonate with power. It's kind of like plugging in your computer to a power source. The power source
Mhm.
being blood in this case, and so I do sigils as well. So when we're talking about actually casting the blood sigils, a lot of time I will burn them to cast them. Do you ever burn some of your blood sigils, or do you ever use your blood and then burn it on parchments or anything like that?
Oh yeah, definitely. I anoint candles too. So sometimes I'll prick my finger and then I'll just make the sigil in blood without putting any ink on there. It depends like how intricate the sigil is because it can take a while and then you get kind of like irritated when you're doing it. Or you can simply just, if you have a quill, that can actually work too. If you can actually get more of your blood into like a little tray or something and then just quill it, then that's perfect. You don't have to keep irritating yourself while you're doing it. So
Yeah.
that might work better for some people. But you can also make oils with it too, and then if you can save that blood in that oil and then just reuse the oil, then you don't have to keep, you know, pricking yourself or cutting yourself to get that blood out of there every
Yeah.
single time.
So that's an interesting point. So I've actually never combined. So I've never put my blood in a vial and combined it with a certain kind of spiritual oil. So I got fast luck oil. I got crown of success oil.
Nice.
I got like shushu oil. I got a number of different kinds of oils that I use.
Nice.
I've never thought about combining them. Do you think that so I think that blood and oil, they don't really mix that well, but do you think that the power is still transferred into the oil by putting
Definitely.
by putting your blood into it?
Yeah. I highly believe it is because the stuff that you already made, the oils that you have, already has your energy in it. So you're basically just enhancing it by adding a little piece of you. You can put saliva, you could do some other things to it that I'm not going to name, but blood can definitely go in there, or a little piece of your hair, something like that. Something that's from your body can go in it, whatever sort of viscous liquid you want that to be. So, yeah.
So do you feel like other fluids are interchangeable with blood, or do you think that blood is one of the most powerful fluids that you have that you can use?
Depending on what I'm trying to use it for, if I'm trying to diss on somebody, hex them, or curse them, or literally spitting on someone's grave is disrespectful enough, or someone that is related to them to hex them or send out spirits against them, you can do that. And that's a simple sort of hex right there. It doesn't take a whole lot of objects, just you and your energy and your guides. So
So the intention is a huge part of the magic, you would say then.
Part of it, definitely.
Yeah.
I feel like your blood is way more versatile to use on anything. Even though it is directly linked and it has a dominating aspect to it, you can still use it to do bad things or good things. But I feel like spitting or saliva or something can be just as effective, but I view that as more like trying to disgrace somebody in that sense. You know what I mean? But
Yeah.
I would suggest blood if you want versatility.
Yeah, that makes. So there's a lot of people who say that blood magic is dangerous because if you leave some behind, if somebody gets a hold of it, they can use it against you, or they can work against whatever working that you're doing. So a lot of people have told me about that when I do blood work in cemeteries or graveyards, and I might leave some of mine behind. I might do a sigil on a gravestone, what have you. I also might leave it. I might burn it and leave it in ash on parchment. I haven't had any trouble with anybody being able to obtain that and then direct it back at me. But do you think that there's any kind of danger with blood magic in that regard or some other kind of regard?
I feel like a lot of people who would possibly bring that up operate more out of the fear aspect of what could happen instead of actually believing in their own energy and their own power. That has a lot to do with a lot of things, honestly. When you're working with deities and spirits, you can't be afraid of something going wrong. When you dabble in any sort of magic or practice, you can't hold that fear above your own head. You are literally lowering your vibrational output towards that stuff. So
it kind of
I would
poisons
say no.
magic.
I'd say that your blood was already dominating enough and that you'd be just fine. And if you're already in the cemetery working closely with certain spirits and whatnot, then they have your back. So you are already protected. That's what I believe, but some people may beg to differ.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. It is. So a lot of the fears are operating out of a sense. So operating from a motive of fear, letting it poison your work will inherently make your work less effective and less powerful. It's because that stops intention kind of in its tracks.
Yeah,
And
you limit yourself. Mm-hmm.
yeah, the intention kind of like forms into a fear. Do you feel that blood work? Have you done blood work? You said in regard to curses. Have you done curses with blood your own blood before? And do you feel like that gave it your own energy because of your either hatred or because that was a reason that you were actually trying to hurt somebody? Do you feel like that the blood transferred that energy well? Or is it just something that can be done through other means? Or do you think that blood is specifically powerful for curses if you know how to do it?
Okay, there's certain things where I would say you should know how to do it, but at the same time, you can curse anybody just by literally getting upset in your own head, depending on how strong your own energy is. So you don't necessarily have to put blood on anything unless you really want to. But the last curse I did, I bound somebody. So I ended up having an olive oil and anointing oil mixture base with blood in it. And then I slathered it all over that working to bind their energy and their own turmoil inside that working. And then I proceeded to get rid of it after the fact. But you can do things like that because it highly dominates the situation. But you don't have to. It's just a preference. I feel like it adds way more energy than if you don't. So
Yeah. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So I don't particularly do this because I don't. I think that it creates an expectation from the spirits or God or dead person, what have you. But a lot of people offer blood to the dead, to the gods, to their demons. They make that an offering that they provide to various beings that they work with. Do you think do you think that that's safe, or is there something wrong with that inherently? I tend to not do that because it creates that expectation. But what are your thoughts on that?
yeah, I know a lot of occultists tend to do that when they summon or call upon demons. I feel like if anything, you're going to call on a demon or any sort of god or goddess that entails that you need to use blood to summon them or call them forth, that you should make a sigil where you can just burn it and get rid of it. so it doesn't like hold you accountable after the fact. So you can kind of, I guess what I'm trying to say is when you call them, they're there, but after the fact that you've called them and you're done, burn it and get rid of it, so there's no like cookie crumb trail after the fact. You're not leaving something open in that sense. It'll help close it off and get rid of it. Other than that, I don't really think there should be any problem with using your blood with deities for the most part. I think it's really just up to the person giving it too much power in their own mind's eye at that point. But that's just my opinion. So
that makes sense. So I think that using blood in regards to divination. So I work with the runes a lot because I work in the northern shamanic path. So a lot of the time if I'm creating a sigil or creating a talisman, I will inscribe runes in my own blood. So my most powerful rune set, though, if I'm just talking about divination, is one that I cut from a tree. I cut in different segments, and then I carved and burned the runes into, and then I put my own blood on, and then I painted them red. So have you heard about using blood in relation to divination? Do you use the runes, tarot, or anything like that? I know that. So my one rune bag, my dogs a long time ago killed this squirrel, and I was like, okay, I'm going to use this because the squirrel's significant for the Norse. And I cut off the head of the squirrel, and then I tied it to a tree and let the ants completely take away anything but the skull. And then I thanked the squirrel. I inscribed runes upon its head, and I put it in my rune bag. That's also tied to divination. But do you have any? Do you do divination with blood, or do you work with any kind of artifacts like that with your own blood?
I do one type of divination. I think typically they just call it water scrying, but I use blood, and I use both at the same time. So you would prick yourself. It's up to you how many drops of blood you want to put in, but I typically do 3 because I like working in 3s. So I do 1, 2, 3 into the bowl of water. It depends how big you want it. The bowl that I have is like around this big. So I would fill it up with like an inch space or so, and then I watch the blood do its like cloud movements, and then I focus into that, and then whatever images come to mind is basically what I write down and record, and I go from there. So that's one method of spraying that I do with blood. It's the only one I have right now. So
yeah. Have you ever dabbled in tarot at all or anything like that?
yeah, I do. I haven't been using it as much as I used to. It's something that I fall into and fall out of. I mean, I do that with little bits of my practice here and there, like something I'll call to me more than the other, and I'll stop doing that for a little bit and go to the other thing and maybe come back to it later. Yeah. But yeah, I have an oracle deck and I have one tarot deck. I don't really care to collect more than one because I'm not one of those people who needs to hoard all these magical things. Yeah. But yeah, I do have one, and I have an oracle deck that I use here and there. But it's not the biggest tool for me, honestly.
So I think that from what I'm getting from you and what I believe myself, it's most powerful to use your own blood. So a lot of people who think about blood magic or talk about blood magic, they imagine that blood magicians are draining other people of their blood or taking blood from people and using that, perhaps sacrifice format. But I've always believed that blood magic should be done with the practitioner's own blood. And then that is the only blood that you really should use. Is that something that you believe as well?
Yes. Yeah, definitely to a T. Like when I did the last curse work that I did, I had a strand of hair of that person. But I put that person's, anything that was belonging to them was on the inside, and then my blood was on the outside, dominating their world, and I contained it. And then I got rid of it after I was done working it. So I believe all your blood that's it. That's all you need. You don't need anything else. You can literally dominate someone's whole world with just blood if you wanted to, and it's versatile. Yeah, so all you need is you.
Yeah, I have heard you mention domination in reference to blood. I think that I also understand a similar way. I think that it's a supreme act of your own will, and that can be used for domination as well. Do you feel like it's an extension of your will into reality, into this world that can create an effect? Is that something that you also think?
Yeah, I definitely do. I believe that the blood itself coming from you is that energy that can alter somebody else's reality. You're taking you and your intentions and altering somebody else's. You're bringing it into, because inside, I believe we contain our own little universe inside of us. Our intentions and everything are all like this collective inside our fleshy vessel, and it just contains all this energy. So if you can take some of that out of there in that sort of perspective there, and then put it around something else that you're trying to control, trying to manipulate, trying to drive a force into, then that's literally what you're doing with your blood. That's how I see it.
That makes a lot of sense. It's so the way that I first got into blood magic was when I first heard about it many years ago. Well, probably about 9 years ago, 10 years ago. I thought it was very strange in reference to magic, but I started using it with sigils, and then I started casting those sigils over time, and then I actually created multiple servitors, and one of them I did feed with blood, which some people think could be a problem if you're feeding a servitor with blood. But how did you kind of get into blood magic? What was your first thing with blood magic?
My first thing with blood magic, I read about, it was a while ago. I don't know, how old was I? I think I was roughly 23. I was reading a book about love magic, actually. It was like folk love magic. I don't have the book anymore, sadly, but there's a lot of spells in there that I didn't really care too much about, so I ended up donating the book to a thrift store. So I took what I could from it and then recycled it. So there was a spell in there that was an old folk spell that said you could use blood to anoint an apple with it and then place it under the bed, and then that person will slowly begin to develop these feelings for you or whatever. It was an old folk thing. I'm not even sure what sort of country or where it was from, but it was a long time ago. I'm too old to remember things now. So, but it was along those lines, and I thought about it, and I was like, blood's a really dominating liquid that we have in our body that we could use for a lot of things, and I wanted to learn more about it. But sadly, there wasn't that much about it, so I had to kind of intuitively figure out what I needed to do with it at that point in time, because there wasn't a whole lot of outlets to figure these things out. So I just slowly started incorporating it into my work, and it seemed like it enhanced it a lot. So I just kept doing it with a little bit of everything that I could use it in, and just went from there.
Do you feel like the energy? So a lot of my blood work, the reason why I don't store it in oils, something like that, because I thought about it before, is I feel like the magic of blood, it does, the potency does last. But when you first make the piercing, first make the cut, however you do, I usually use ear piercing needles. But I've done razor blades and my athames in the past. I feel like the magic is most potent right after that, and then when you're either writing the sigil, when you're writing the spell, whatever you're using it for, the blood is most potent right then. But do you think the power just kind of does stick around, and the potency does stick around, even if you let it sit for a long time, like in an oil or something like that?
I believe it does. I believe it may not be as strong, especially based off of the intentions at the time that you were trying to use to manifest whatever you were doing. So I would agree in that sense that whatever you're trying to use your blood for at that time will probably be the most effective, because you have all the feelings and the intentions and everything is there right at that moment that you're trying to perform that magic. So that would be a prime time to use it. But if you don't really like having to draw your own blood that often every time you do spell work, you can contain a small amount of it and preserve it. You can even make it into like a dragon's blood with your own blood, sort of ink, and then you contain your blood in that, and it'll still work just as good. But that's just my opinion. But,
yeah, that makes sense. So before we end this little segment, because usually when we do these, it's good to do little 20-minute segments. Is there anything that you'd like to tell anybody about blood magic? Any either warnings or any kind of just basic modus operandi? Just what to keep in mind when doing blood magic, or anything that you would tell somebody about this, kind of closing this segment that we're doing?
My suggestion for anything to do in a spiritual path is don't be afraid, and try to find as much information as you can, and don't be afraid to spread your horizon on things. Don't just stay narrow-minded in one set path. Try to know as much as you can.
I definitely back that up 100%. But thank you for joining me for this segment. Would you like to throw your YouTube channel out there just for anybody who's watching this on my channel?
Oh yeah, my YouTube is One Fit Bruja, and I'm an eclectic witch, and I have all sorts of different vlogs and workings, magic, whatever, anything you can think of is on there.
Excellent. And if this appears on yours, I'll say that you can just look me up at Hunter Salazar, Hunter space Salazar on YouTube. I have a number of different magical topics, as well as self-help, psychology, meditation. I have a lot of different things as well. But thank you very much for joining me on this, and I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, everybody, have a good day.